Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And this week, joining us from the Netherlands is Esther Schmit. Hey, Esther. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Vasco. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. So Esther is a freelance Agile coach and Scrum Master, and she leads Agile Pro Center, providing online Agile coaching, training, and mentoring for Scrum Masters. And she's also the host of the Online Scrum Master Summit. For those of you who want to know more, check out the show notes. The link is in the show notes for the Online Scrum Master Summit. So Esther, that was a short intro. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you end up becoming a Scrum Master?
Well, thank you for that nice introduction, Vasco. Tell me a bit about myself. Well, as you said, I'm an Agile coach and Scrum Master, and working for different companies here in the Netherlands as a freelance. And well, it was quite funny. I used to be a PMO, so a project management officer, usually for waterfall projects. And one of the teams that I was working with, they were going to become a Scrum team. And well, they were already kind of a Scrum team as it was, but their Scrum Master was leaving quite quickly all of a sudden. And what happened then is that the project lead, or who became the project owner, product owner, he came to me and he's like, Esther, what are you doing at the moment? Would you like to become my Scrum Master? And this was quite some years ago. I'm like, Scrum Master, what is it? I have no idea. He's like, no, you'll be great. And I'm like, well, nice for you to know that I'm going to be great, but what is it? What does it entail? What? I really had no clue. So we had a coffee and he was explaining a little bit what was going on and how it works. And I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. So he's like, you know what? We will have a change of sprints, and and we start in about 10 minutes. Why don't you join us and see how that goes?
That was quick.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay. So, and I'm like, all right. And that was still, the old Scrum Master was still there. I think that was his last day or something. And so I walked into the room and they're like, oh, yeah, hi, this is Esther. She's just joining us and seeing how this goes. And by the way, this is your new Scrum Master.
Oh, my God.
I'm like, okay. I'm like, sure. So that's how I became a Scrum Master.
Oh, wow. Well, of course, I mean, that kind of story can be a little bit daunting, perhaps, and definitely anxiety creating. But here you are, many years later, still a Scrum Master and Agile coach. So obviously, it kind of stuck, right? So you're still doing that type of role in your work, and even made a business out of it now as a freelance Scrum Master and Agile coach. And I'm sure you have so many stories to share, and we'll go through many of those this week. But to get us started, let's start with one of those most difficult stories, because, we all face difficult moments and we learn a lot. And that's why we want to share this kind of stories here on the podcast. So Esther, tell us a story of one of those moments where you were maybe in trouble, or at least in a bind. Maybe things were not working as you expected. And we'll dive into the takeaways and the lessons learned later. But tell us that story first, Esther.
Well, like I said, I just became a Scrum Master, and I think it was one of the first teams doing Scrum. But like I said, it was a very large company. So all of a sudden, some other teams thought, all right, let's start with Scrum as well. And that was only 1, 2, 3 months after I had started as a Scrum Master in that team. And then people were like, Esther, I heard you are a Scrum Master, and I heard very good things about you and that you're really good. Could you come and train us? I'm like, okay, I've just been a Scrum Master for 2 or 3 months. Before that, I heard a little bit about Scrum, and how am I all of a sudden the know-it-all. And I'm like, I don't know it all. And that was, I think, very difficult for me to not show that I didn't know it all. And I had sometimes no clue what I was doing or if it was good what I was doing. So I found that very difficult, at not daring to say that I didn't know it all, and ask for feedback. I think that was very difficult, to ask for feedback. And yeah, I think, yeah, that was one of the most difficult times, that people thought I was great and I had no idea that, yeah, I didn't think of that myself at all.
So
I'm like,
when you're thinking about that, and how it happened in the past, and now of course you have a lot more experience, what would you do? Like, if you had a time machine and you could go back and meet yourself, Back to the Future style, and give yourself a note with some insights, some ideas, maybe some encouraging words, what would you do to your younger self that was at that time starting to be seen as a Scrum Master, even though at that time you still didn't feel that you were a very experienced Scrum Master? What would you tell Esther of that time?
I think I would tell Esther to go and see other teams, ask other Scrum Masters how it's done, how they are doing, what they are facing, or the problems they are facing. Ask other Scrum Masters for feedback, or to help you out. I found it very difficult to ask for help.
And what changed in you? Because obviously you've realized that, so at least the realization happened. And how did you then decide later on to actually, go out and ask for help? Like, how did that transformation happen for you?
Well, good question. I think I did get more of of course I became a little bit more experienced, but also I did notice at some point, okay, well, I need to ask for help. You don't know it all. And people might think that you do, but it's fine to tell people you don't know it all, and just to be honest. And yeah, at some point you grow into a role, and you become more self-confident, and with that self-confidence, you do know that you don't know it all. And I still don't know it all.
And this is quite ironic, I think, because I have the same experience you do, and many of our listeners, I'm sure, have the same, which is that it is at the beginning of our journey that is the hardest to ask for help, even though it is at that time that we need the most help, right? And now you also train and mentor other Scrum Masters. How do you get that message across, that it is okay to ask for help? It is, in fact, part of the process to realize what you need help on and then ask for it.
Well, not just Scrum Masters, but anybody, I always encourage them to ask questions. Always ask questions. I keep asking questions. Constantly I ask questions. And I tell other people to ask questions. Any question is fine. There is no dumb question. There's only, well, I think it's a bit of an odd saying, but there's only dumb answers. But there is no stupid question. So ask questions. And yeah, I think also by asking questions myself to others, I think that will encourage them to ask questions as well. And I also try sometimes to ask, to for others, okay, did you understand what I said or explained? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, can you tell me in your own words? And they're like, ooh. And then they find out that they might not understand it, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, no worries, but ask, and then together you can work on things.
Absolutely. And I really like that, starting from the place of curiosity, right? Like asking questions. And what I really like about it is that very often we expect others want us to make statements. But as we grow into this role and to the coaching perspective of the role, we understand that actually our role is to ask questions. not to know the answers, because that's what we want them to figure out, because they own it, right? Like they have to own the answer. Otherwise, when we go, the answers disappear with us, right? And that starting from a place of curiosity is really, I think, a key tip from my perspective. And I also like this asking for validation. So what did you understand from what I just said, right? Like that asking for validation also helps people to come to their own understanding of what we are describing.
Yeah, and in trainings as well. If there's a few people in a training, you say, okay, well, after in the net, after we've had a break, then I will ask somebody to give like a short summary of what we've just gone through. And yeah, that definitely helps them. Like, oh, I could be next. So, and then they might even listen more or better, take more notes. So yeah, that will help as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great tip, by the way. Ask the students in the training to summarize what they just learned, because that makes sure they pay attention.
Yeah, they don't want to fail in front of the rest. So yeah.
That was great. Thank you for sharing all of those tips with us, Esther.
You're welcome.
Monday is about what we learn from our obstacles and our failures. But tomorrow is Team Tuesday here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. We explore teams and their journeys, the habits they develop that threaten their performance, how each of our guests help their teams evolve, and the one key lesson they learned from that experience. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.